I acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, traditional custodians of Garilpa West End, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. This video is a tribute to the loss of their commons, which they maintained and cultivated cooperatively for millennia. Growing up in apartheid South Africa, I became chronically aware of how maintaining privilege is very costly psychologically. When difference is not tolerated, we become fearful, defensive, and materialistic. I used to have night terrors that I'd cause the end of the world. After apartheid, I volunteered at the Bulungula project in tribal Eastern Cape. It was embarrassing, but also a relief to be made fun of by Xhosa men, who made sheep noises at me when I had the brilliant idea of using leftover roof thatching for mulch. It just blew away in the coastal winds. You're teaching us permaculture? They taught me how to fish and farm with ease. I became friends with a Xhosa woman. At the time, I was disturbed by visions of little peanut people that came out when everything was bad. We visit her uncle, a witch doctor. He tells me that little people are amakosi, little kings. They're here to help. Many whites felt an ontology of transcendence, where English majesty had more godly being than that of commoners. The Lord sold our common land to a few, and we ended up global vagabonds, shipped out or ran away to the colonies. Rawlsian liberalism says you're meant to be compensated for your natural right to land, but no amount of compensation is enough for the loss of the earth, common dreaming, mental health. The genocide and violence we inflicted came from desperation and the delusion of our ontology. We were and are so desperate to become landowners, privateers, and ignore the commons of others. On my walk to work through West End, I noticed that First People culture is well represented for Brisbane. Community facilities and installation give some legitimacy and dignity for First People to occupy space. John O'Shree, our local member, has been strong on Indigenous naming and inclusive public spaces like the new Banyapa Park. I bump into white acquaintances who are paying off their mortgages maintaining Indigenous public art. It's the insurgent marking on the road, the graffiti and the yarning in place that mark substance of First People's presence. The boundary streets of Brisbane are famous markers of Australia's apartheid. A few years ago, progressive locals tried to change the name to something more palatable. Indigenous elders said, no, it's important to remember. I work in an experimental social housing project called Common Ground. Most of our participants have been variably displaced by violence or stolen and abused by institutions of welfare. Caseworkers help them get compensation from ever new schemes of redress or welfare. We have made a new commons based on individualism. You cannot have kids or family here. We are an organisation premised on providing universal human rights to those that have lost natural human rights. A big lump of public art was made on a bench to stop people socialising with their street community. Crime prevention through environmental design, or rather culture prevention. I shop at West End markets. I used to avoid Jenny Pineapple. I have sensory sensitivity and her voice is loud. I approach with this assignment in mind. She says she is protesting gentrification, singing back country and sustainable community. She says we can make the future out of the tall concrete ant nests. Funny thing, she sings songs that I know. Later, I attend a meeting to blockade a construction site. It's common land and an old tribal route through to Woolloongabba that government has sold for more speculative development. Curlews are gathering here at a construction site on the commons, calling the pain of the past and the promise of the future together.